Let's start this party with a bang. Welcome. Welcome everybody to the 30th anniversary of Batman Forever. I am your host for this morning. I'm Ben Wan, and this is Superhero Stuff You Should Know. We're a podcast specializing in nostalgic superhero movies, mostly known for our coverage of the 90s Batman movies, including, of course, Batman Forever. We cover alternate casting, deleted scenes, early drafts of scripts, alternate director's cuts, which we're probably going to address immediately once I'm done here. But we've had several episodes specifically on Batman Forever, including an interview with our two guests at the end, Lee and Janice Scott Batchler, the screenwriters of the movie. These were the first writers on board, and it's because of them that we get the general structure and story of this movie. They were the ones who pitched the Riddler as the villain to Joel Schumacher, and they created Dr. Chase Meridian. So please welcome. And of course, the man next to me should be known to all of you, but if not, this is the man who went on his own Batman-like quest to bring the dark and serious Batman to the movies and to the big screen. And he's the boy who loved Batman. He is the one who is responsible for why we even have this as one of the most successful franchises. Please welcome Dr. Michael Uslan. So we're just going to start with what everyone's here to talk about, based off of what, Michael, you addressed this as, what was the analogy, the gorilla?
It's the 800-pound gorilla in the room, folks. I can see him, I can feel him.
We have a sign among the audience already to release the Schumacher cut. So let's talk about it.
And that has nothing to do with circumcision, by the way. This is a hot topic. And let me tell you, first of all, that Joel Schumacher was a friend. I love the guy. He was one of the nicest people you would ever want to meet. Talented man, and was given a directive for how the studio wanted this movie delivered, and he operated within those specifics. Yes, there is extended footage. There is extended footage that Joel had. And the thing that everybody needs to understand is that the studio doesn't have like a magic wand that it can just wave and all of a sudden the Schumacher cut is released. It doesn't have a switch that it can just flip and there it is. This is let's call it a video of an assembly of a work print. And that means it needs massive restoration. And that costs lots and lots of money. In addition to the restoration and the investment, it also requires a marketing and distribution plan. So that's a big task. And I like to think, well, if Steven Spielberg was told, oh, we got extended footage that you did way back when of Jaws, and we're gonna release in movie theaters and on DVD a video of an assembly of a work print of your Jaws, I don't think he would be pleased. And I don't think Joel would be pleased for this. He would want to see a full restoration. He would want to see his work presented in the right possible way. So what I can tell you is this. I've been speaking to some of the good folks over at Warner, and you need to keep your cards and emails coming in and express your passion, but in a nice way. Because these people are going to read and they are going to listen. And this is going to be a process, and I think we all need to express that passion and just keep that going.
Thank you. Over to Janet and Lee. I mean, obviously you've heard about this fan movement to have this released, and it must be really surreal in terms of this is a movie that you wrote over 30 years ago, and we've had 30 years of other Batman movies since, as Michael definitely knows and had a hand in, but now we have this renaissance, this resurgence of it. We have Batman Forever action figures are now released over at Target. How does this feel to see fans want not just this, to see more of this movie, but more of scenes, some of which you wrote, some of which were written by Akiva Goldsman, but more of some of what you had
you know, it's pretty wonderful to see that the movie is still loved after all these years. You know, if you look at a list of releases from 30 years ago, you don't recognize most of them. You know, I look at them like, did I see that? I mean, I think I did, but I don't remember anything about it. It's an honor and a privilege to have just a tiny footprint in the Batman universe. And it's really lovely that people do come back and see what amounts to an older movie, you know, and still enjoy it after all this time. I love it. As Ben sort of mentioned, I'm also a professor at the USC Film School, and you know, when my students come and ask me a question about my movie, I'm like, you weren't born. And you love it, and that just, it makes me feel sort of wonderful. So it's a privilege to still have it around.
Yeah, we saw a screening of it recently down in Santa Ana, and I hadn't looked at it for a very long time, and I sort of, it was almost like a new experience for me, like, this is fun, there's a lot of joy in this movie, and that was like, okay, I remember when it came out, how good the movie made me feel, and I got to feel that again. That was really nice.
I just have to add for a sec. First of all, it is such an honor to be sitting here with Janet and Lee again. I remember the first time I saw the film completed, and it opens with the line where Alfred goes, "Sir, may I prepare a sandwich?" And he goes, "No, I'll get drive-through." I go, "Wait a minute, that was not in their script. That was not them. Who put that in? It was not them."
Right. And that's one of the things that I thought we should talk about, is things that were in the original script, things that are presumably in the Schumacher cut that people are interested in. It's gone kind of through a sort of long process of people rediscovering unseen material. You can see it in novelizations, you can see it in a comic book adaptation, you can find it on the scripts online, including one of the ones that the Batchlers here wrote. So some of these include, one Easter egg that's not in the scripts that I know you had told us once about, that I'm sure Michael would love to hear, is the fact that one Easter egg that Janet told me was that there was going to be the giant penny in the Batcave in one of the scripts. So.
All right, wait a minute, comic book geek time. Does anyone know the one true original date that was on the giant penny in the Hall of Trophies in the Batcave? Nobody. Okay, so I'm going to geek out here. I'm going to tell you something that very few of us know. It should have been 1947, because in the first time the big penny showed up, it was in World's Finest number 30, The Case of the Penny Plunderers. And that was published in 1947. That's the date on the giant penny. You now know something. You could win any Batman trivia.
You and all the geek awards today, Michael.
Oh, could it be a hint of the way I'm dressed?
Let's see, but I think one of the big things that the reason why people want to see this is due to the fact that there's so much more Bruce Wayne. There's so much more Batman in this. So for those who don't know what is in this, because I think ironically out of the people on the stage, I'm the only one who's actually seen this extended cut, which is, like Michael said, it is a work print. VHS version, but it is a subplot of Bruce Wayne gripping with his duality, and one of the scenes that I know went through many different phases, but did start with you two, was this deleted scene of Bruce confronting his fears and his childhood trauma with the giant bat in the Batcave, which you can all see on YouTube, but finding that aspect that everyone wants to see, I think it is like a big testament in terms of your understanding of the character, and I thought we should harken back to that. That's a big reason why I got this job. That's a big reason why you're the writers on this. So there's a lot of like misconception in terms of like the development of this, but from what I remember you telling me, Janet, by the time you're brought in, Tim Burton's already stepped down, mainly as a producer. Joel Schumacher's already the director, but Tim is still on to oversee the passing of the torch. So it's actually Tim Burton who hires you two.
Yeah, but he was in the room, and
Yeah.
we had to get his approval, and when he sort of bluntly said, "So what do you think Batman is about?" And Jan said,
Oh, I said the Batman is about duality. I said, because, you look at Superman is Clark Kent, but everybody else is everybody. Lois Lane is always Lois Lane. And Jimmy Olsen is always Jimmy Olsen. I said, but Batman, everybody has a dual identity. It's not just Batman and Bruce Wayne. Everybody has a dual identity.
Oswald falsified as the Penguin.
And we said that's what the heart of Batman is.
And
Duality, and Tim just sort of leaned back in his chair and said, yes. And we were like, oh, I think we got this job.
So, and then continuing forward in terms of, you've got this job, the screenplay is now in your hands, but there's some mandates in terms of what needs to happen in here. Tell us about what led to the villains.
Well, the first mandate was they had a release date and they didn't really know what the story was going to be. That was our job. So they handed us that we're going to have two villains, and we were kind of hoping for one, but okay, that's a carryover from the previous film. But it struck us, okay, how do we handle this and have it not be just pile-on of too much to follow? And we thought, okay, if this is about duality, let's have one of the villains Bruce Wayne's villain, and the other villain is Batman's villain. So to serve both sides of Batman's personality, that's how we came up with the Riddler is going to be Bruce Wayne's villain, and eventually the two joined forces. But that's how that came about.
And they came to us with Two-Face already in place. They said, we want to do Two-Face, but we're completely open on who the other villain should be. And of course, at this point, outside of the comic book world, there were the two movies that Michael had sort of resurrected and almost single-handedly brought back to life. But other than that, there was the 1960s TV show. And we said, okay, there's still an audience out there. There's still an audience out there that remembers the 1960s TV show. So let's think about those villains, because they will be more accessible, where only the comic book people are going to know who Two-Face is. So let's find a villain that the bigger audience will recognize and say, oh, I've heard of them. I'll go see this movie. So we ended up with the Riddler, again, as Lee said, to battle Bruce, and Two-Face to battle Batman.
And in kind of the next step, I had an early conversation with Joel, and he was explaining his vision to me. He said, we've got the Riddler and Two-Face. He said, I see it as taking the Joker and bisecting the Joker into two supervillains, with the Riddler being the over-the-top crazy guy and Two-Face being the maniacal, absolutely deadly guy. And I thought that was a real interesting approach to take to that. And regarding Two-Face, my ongoing, it wasn't a spat, it was a friendly battle with Joel. He kept wanting to call Two-Face Harvey Two-Face. I go, no, he's Two-Face. He's Two-Face. Yeah, he's Harvey Dent, but he's Two-Face. And the script at that point, I think, had a lot of Harvey Two-Face references.
Sort of put it back in.
Yeah, that was Joel's thing. And bit by bit, we got him taken out. There's still a couple, I think, or a few that are in there. But that was just one of the battles that only a total geek could ever have.
And I think with Two-Face, there's an interesting thing that people noticed with going from 89 Returns and Batman Forever, where it's just like, well, Billy D. Williams was Harvey Dent in 89, what happened there? But from what my understanding is, it wasn't a situation where, because there's all these stories about like Billy D. Williams' contract got bought out, which he was just like, no, I was just doing the one movie. Like, this was one where Joel Schumacher already wanted Tommy Lee Jones. Let's do films.
He wanted Tommy Lee Jones. He told us that in our very first meeting. He said, you're writing for Tommy Lee Jones as Harvey Two-Face. So that was a done deal when we came up.
Right. And then when you come up with Riddler, we do get the great Jim Carrey in the role, but that's not actually who you originally were writing for.
We wrote for Robin Williams.
And that is something that, like when I first found that out, it's so difficult sometimes for me to look at the script and think anyone else other than Jim Carrey in that. But I can also see what you were planting with Robin Williams.
Well, and at the time, you know, Jim Carrey was really fresh in his career. And at the time, people read the script and they couldn't see anybody other than Robin Williams doing it. And somebody we know who knew Robin up in the Bay Area ran into him the weekend he was reading the script, and he said, "I love the script. I want to do it. I want to do it." And then his agents basically said, "We're going to hold him up for more money because we can, because there's nobody else in town who can play this part but you." And the thing is that there was somebody else in town who could play the part.
Oh my God, is that the way Hollywood really works?
It's crazy too.
Yeah, I mean, with that, it's you can see if you look at the original comics, Riddler looks just like Robin Williams. Like it's really understandable why that would be the first choice, and a lot of people kind of love that as an alternative casting. I think with that, again, I had some trouble seeing it, but I think if you go on YouTube, there is an audio drama that I had a hand in where we had a great impression as an actor who did Robin Williams' voice, doing the lines that you had originally written, and that's when it finally clicked with me. That like, okay, this is the Robin Williams style for that. So if you guys want to check that out, that's Neuverse Creative. That's Neuverse. You know, I'm getting the plug, and let Stan would say, right? Like, yeah, I had a hand in adapting like some of your material, Akiva Goldsman's material, and then I got to voice the Michael Keaton Batman in one, and then Val Kilmer's Batman in the other. So it was a great experience because I love this movie so much. I think one of the things too with Batman is that we have to address with this year is that unfortunately we are left with the passing of Val Kilmer this year, and I thought we should spend some time to talk about his legacy and your experiences and memories of him.
Well, I loved his performance because it was restrained. It was there was kindness, especially his relationship towards Dick Grayson. You know, it wasn't all dark. There was some light there. It was a very subdued and controlled performance. He was a marvelous actor, and I miss him. He was nice to us, but he was very focused on. Whenever we were on the set, he was focused on what he was doing. So it wasn't like super social. Whereas Jim Carrey was like, "Oh, Jim, sit in my seat."
He let me sit in his chair. He was like, "You shouldn't be standing." I was like, "Actors don't say that."
He's just a very gregarious person.
Yeah.
But I thought that it served character well, what he brought to it.
I have to add in here, you know, all of the Batman movies are not really truly about Batman. They are all about Bruce Wayne. And I think Val Kilmer was a fantastic Bruce Wayne. There was an era in the Batman comics in the 1970s when they were returning him to his darker roots. And there was a run in Detective Comics by Marshall Rogers and Steve Englehart. And it was a darkly romantic version of Bruce Wayne. And it evoked in me a Broadway play I saw back in the 70s. It was Frank Langella as Dracula. And it later became a movie with Frank in it. And what Frank did was he took vampirism, Dracula, and made it sexual and darkly attractive. And at the end of the first act on Broadway, with his lovely victim laying there with her neck exposed, and him enveloping her with the cape and going down with his fangs, and then it went to black. And then the lights come on in the theater, and all you heard was, it was that kind of a thing that Langella brought to Dracula, and I thought in a way that Val brought it to Bruce Wayne Batman. It was very interesting, but I thought he did a magnificent job.
Yeah. It's interesting that you bring up the Marshall Rogers, Steve Englehart arc, because I've always thought when I first, because I had seen Batman Forever before I read that arc, and then I get to a point where you've got Silver St. Cloud, who's kind of like, you know, she's been in bed and stuff, and then Batman comes in through the window, and I was like, wait a minute, that's Batman Forever. So, but yeah, I mean, I always saw Val Kilmer as the embodiment of that 1970s Batman, the romantic one, I think is how you describe it.
Yes, for Val Kilmer, but in terms of the movie itself,
Well,
in my humble opinion, I can kind of characterize each Batman movie, at least out of the first four, as being in sync with a different era of the comic book version of Batman. So to me, Tim's first Batman movie was Batman circa 39-40, before Robin, first meeting the Joker. Batman Returns, that was more like the DC Comics of the 1990s, really, really, really dark. And by the way, I always describe those two movies. I always say that Batman 1989 was a Batman movie directed by Tim Burton, and Batman Returns was a Tim Burton movie starring Batman. And with Batman Forever, I think what Joel captured was Batman of the late 1940s and 1950s by Bill Finger and Dick Sprang, of Batman and Robin together, jumping all over giant typewriter keys, punning their way against this magnificent rogues gallery of supervillains. And I think he really successfully captured that era in his film.
Yeah, Joel kept saying, I want to make a living comic book. And you see that in the technicolor of it all.
The design.
The design, the bright colors, and the fun.
for sure. I think you even cited some of those comics to me in terms of the ones that you consulted for that. I mean, obviously you've got the Origin of Robin, the Riddler, Two-Face. I believe also at one point you told me you read Nightfall as well for the 90s.
We read everything. We were on an airplane once on a flight, and we had surrounded by comic books and a book about the psychology of Batman, and we're just reading because we're working. We're trying to crack the story, and the stewardess says, "Can I get you anything?" She's like, "We're working." You know, we're reading your comics, and we just immersed ourselves in that world.
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely see that too, in terms of the living comic book aspect, the 1940s, the big props, like Michael was talking about. In terms of the psychology aspect that you've talked a lot to me about in past interviews, like that's where the Dr. Chase Meridian character comes in. Let's talk a little bit in terms of the creation of her, because it was kind of one where you were told, hey, like, we can't bring back the previous actresses. We're not bringing back Vicky Vale. There's some people who think like Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman was due to come back in the third one. Not true, they were trying to do the spin-off at the time.
Right.
You were told specifically you can't bring in the Catwoman. So how does Dr. Chase Meridian get created?
Well, once we dove into the idea of Batman and Bruce Wayne sort of as two sides of the same person and the duality of it all, you know, really, here's the thing. Bruce Wayne is a somewhat disturbed individual. He's got some mental health issues that he cannot resolve. Because if he ever resolves them, he can't be Batman anymore. And so it is for the good of the world that he does not resolve these issues. So that's another way in which he is being torn. And we said, so to explore that, why don't we have him fall in love with a psychiatrist who can see through him, who can see through all the divisions and the things that he's buried and the secrets that he's hiding, and who can sort of see the inner person that we usually don't get to see in a Batman story. And that became Dr. Chase Meridian. Yeah, the Meridian name is because he's divided down the middle, and she's the one who can hopefully bridge that divide.
Yeah, which I found to be clever too. I mean, it did make me think like, okay, how come he doesn't have a psychiatrist love interest in the comics? Like this seems like a no-brainer here. After
Somebody
seeing
you
that.
can talk to.
Somebody who he realizes this person understands me.
Mhm.
It's the superhero version of The Sopranos. It just dawned on me.
It's true. I hadn't thought about that. And then with, like, let's go a little bit into what was in some of your scripts that might not have made it into the final film. I mean, the original opening, as you can see in a lot of the comic book adaptation, YouTube deleted scenes, but the original opening is Two-Face breaking out Arkham with a message that the Bat must die. We have several references actually to the previous Batman movies, including a sequence at the end where the Riddler uses the box to make Batman hallucinate the Joker, Penguin, and Catwoman. And a lot of people are kind of like, well, especially seeing Michael Keaton come back in The Flash, we're very much more continuity obsessed these days. And some people are wondering, like, is it still connected to the Burton-verse? And I think based off, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but based off of our conversations, you wrote it as the sequel
As a
to
sequel,
the
yeah.
Tim Burton movies. Whereas Michael, I know you feel like the final movie is a separate universe.
Yeah, I do.
So take that for what you will.
Yeah, well, we talk about the script. There was nothing in their script that mentioned the word nipples, by the way. That was purely a part of the vision of Joel, working with Bob Ringwood, and I asked him about that. I asked him like this. I think he thought that superheroes were a modern day mythology, and if you go back to all the Greek and Roman myths that our superheroes have modernized and used, all the statues, all the paintings, well, that's what they show. Nobody thought it would become Nipplegate and become this thing. But yeah, I had a very, very difficult time kind of understanding it. But when you have a director who has a vision and has a knowledge and love for a character, everybody's job is to be supportive of the filmmaker and whatever that vision is, provided it doesn't undermine the integrity of the character and the integrity of the creators of the character. So yeah, there they are, but it was not in their script.
Let's go. In terms of costuming, though, one really clever idea that was not filmed, but I always loved when I told you about it, is that we originally were going to have a sequence of Edward Nygma stalking Bruce and Chase to the circus, where there is a sort of fortune-telling leprechaun who's there, and Edward takes him over. He basically puts him on the box, takes his costume, goes undercover, but when all the stuff goes down with Two-Face and the Graysons, he leaves the leprechaun outfit, which he then starts adding some question marks on and stuff. And that was a Joel idea, I think, is what you told me at one point, given the costume.
Yeah, because Joel came out of the costuming world in many ways, and so that, he thought that way.
Yeah, he was costume designer and production designer before he became the director.
And he was doing window displays too
Oh, in New York.
In New York, yeah.
New York.
He designed Stephen Sondheim's famous apartment that was the inspiration for Sleuth. Sleuth.
Yeah.
The games on every wall.
Oh. Wow. Yeah, no, I didn't know that about that aspect. I knew about the window because that is kind of an Easter egg in one of the Batman animated series where there's a kid named Joel who's outside a place that says Schumacher or Shoemaker on it, dressing up a window. So that's obviously was a reference to Joel. And then of course one of the other big deleted scenes was Bruce, after getting shot by Two-Face, getting that amnesia, only remembering his life as Bruce Wayne, not as Batman, and then going into the cave, the deep part of the cave, to confront that giant bat in a scene that you pulled from The Dark Knight Returns. Really,
Yeah.
it's even quoted in one of your original scripts of the bat coming towards them and stuff. Do you feel like you personally miss some of these things in the movie, or do you kind of feel like everything that made it was what you were already attached to?
Well, I feel that our editor, Dennis Berkler, was very, very respectful of the structure that we were trying to do. And he really sort of angled his work to preserving the essentials of the story that needed to be told without going into too many detours. So I feel like there's very little that we wrote that I don't feel is missing. It's essentially what's there is some very fun stuff that Kiva brought to it, but I don't feel like anything precious that we wrote is missing.
Gotcha. And then Michael, based off of what you know or might remember of stuff that was cut, do you feel sort of a similar way in terms of like stuff that was missing? Is there something that you miss?
No, absolutely. So much of what Janet Leigh wrote is there, and structure, story. Far more important than this jokey line of dialogue or that jokey line of dialogue. So no, I feel really great about it. One of the other things, just to mention, when shooting started, over in Long Beach is this great dome next to the Queen Mary, which used to house Howard Hughes' Spruce Goose. So I was there when they dismantled the Spruce Goose and they took it out, and Batman Forever was the first movie to be shot inside that giant dome. And it was incredible to see a lot of the ice sets that were set up in there later on.
Batcave.
But the Batcave, it was unbelievable. There was so much space in there that they had like an art department and the lumber and the props, and there were so many things taking place within that dome, and I know it's been used a lot since then, but that all started with this movie.
Awesome. So I think it's time to move on to some audience questions, actually. And so one of the first ones, I did promise to give one to a friend of ours, that's Drew Griffin over at the 1995 Batman podcast. Check out 1995 Batman on YouTube. It's a whole channel dedicated to the Joel Schumacher Batman films. But Drew, go ahead.
Hi, good morning.
Hi.
Well, I've been listening to you guys for a while, and I initially thought I would ask like, what everyone thinks of the final movie, if they're happy with it. But I think everyone is, for the most part.
That's what it sounds like. There was a bit everyone being happy with the final movie.
Yeah, and then I was kind of thinking, well, should I ask like what they think of Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face, or would that be a little too personal, or like what do they think of the comedy sound effects that are in the movie? Like, but
What did you settle on in terms of the question?
well, gosh, it's tough. But and I also thought of Joel, like what he would say if he were sitting here. How do you think Joel is happy with the way the movie turned out?
Do you think Joel is happy?
Or is he more kind of mixed?
He was very happy with it at the time, and
Yeah.
I can't see why he would change his mind after that. Yeah.
I agree. Joel was very happy with this. Again, he was under directive, right? He had to make these movies lighter, brighter, more family friendly, more toy and Happy Meal friendly, and that was his assignment, and he did that. And sadly, he gets way too much flack.
Yep.
Undeservedly so. Undeservedly so. He did, I think, the greatest job he could do under the commandments, and I give him all the credit in the world for having done that. Looking back on the movie, yeah, you know, there's some jokiness. Yeah, I really tend to be a dark Batman guy, so there's some of the jokiness that I wrestle with. As many of you probably know, when I saw the Batman TV show premiere when I was 15 years old, and I was so excited, and 20 minutes in I realized it was a comedy, Batman was a joke, the whole world was laughing at Batman. I made a vow in my parents' basement den in front of Bobby and Barry, my two best friends. I made a vow like young Bruce Wayne once made a vow, except he made his vow over the slaughtered bodies of his parents in the street. My parents were safe in the kitchen. And I said, somehow, someday, someway, I will find a way to show the world the true Batman. The Batman created by Bill Finger and Bob Kane in 1939. And try to eliminate Pow, Zap, and Wham from the collective consciousness of the world culture. When you take that view of it, and you take what Joel did under his directives, how can it be anything but happy?
It's when looking at it on my own show, one of the things that I brought up that I realized in revisiting these movies is like, yes, there is a level of goofiness and camp, but a lot of that is the villains. Batman himself, other than like a few lines, like, you know, chicks love the car. Like, other than that, sorry, it's true, Michael. But other than that, like, Batman himself is still Batman. Batman himself is still the most serious part of it, especially with, you know, this deleted subplot. But even without that subplot, you still are dealing with the trauma and the repressed memories and the duality. And so even though it does have a jokey tone, I've brought up, like, the characterization of Batman himself is actually, like, pretty legit. Batman himself is not the joke. There are jokey elements, but Batman himself, to me, was never really the joke.
And to me, one of the most important parts of the film spiritually was his concern for Dick Grayson, who he sees as a younger version of myself. I lost my parents. I know what this trauma did to me, what it turned me into, and I don't want that for him.
Which I think is one of the most heroic aspects of this version of Kilmer, is the whole idea of, like, I don't want you to go down the same path as me. So, anyone else have a question? Tyler.
Yeah, I have a question actually about Robin, because this movie we talk a lot about how we brought in Two-Face and the Riddler, and we've seen those characters range
was another directive from Warner Brothers. They said, we want to introduce Robin, and we were like, 2 villains and an introduction of a major character. It's like, that is a lot of ground to cover in one movie. A lot of plates to keep spinning in terms of just plot. But once sort of that word came down, we said, okay, we want to be faithful to the original Robin story. And we want to think about what it means for a kid to lose his parents in front of him, to see his parents killed, which of course is what happened to Bruce. So that's where we went. As to why we haven't seen more Robin, that's really a question for Michael than for us.
I just say, as a fanboy right now, I'm sitting one day having lunch in Beverly Hills with Stan Lee, and Stan said to me, "I hate sidekicks." And I said, "Do you care to explain, Stan?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, when we brought back Captain America in 1964 in Avengers 4, I killed Bucky. I don't want Bucky. He said, what grown-up guy is gonna pal around all night long with like a 12 or 14-year-old boy? He should be asleep. He's got school the next day. He's got a test coming up. And he's out all night with bullets being shot at him. He goes, it makes no sense whatsoever. I hate sidekicks. And that's always been part of my personal problem as a fan with Robin. That said, when the geniuses of the comic book world, who do not get the spotlight enough, folks, you know, everybody gravitates to all the people who work on movies, but man, when you look at the work of the people who write and draw the comics, they really do deserve the spotlight. I mean, that's where Nightwing comes out of, and the whole concept of Dick Grayson growing up and going off to college, and then ultimately evolving into Nightwing. And then we've had a procession of Robins come through. One gets killed, another one's the illegitimate son of Batman, who's a handful. I mean, these are really interesting twists and turns that they're coming up with that all of a sudden make stories viable. It makes stories viable. So I think the future for Robin is pretty damn good.
Nice. You heard it here.
Hey, first of all, thank you for being here today. It means a lot, you sharing your stories and making of this incredibly fun movie. My question, or just a general statement, I think Batman Forever, something everybody can agree on, is it has one killer soundtrack. I love like the Offspring and the Seals songs, everything in it. My question is, how do you feel that does it represent your original vision, or does it work well with the movie that ultimately came out of it? What's your take on the soundtrack for this movie?
I mean, I love the soundtrack. I think it was beautifully chosen. I think it was honestly a bit of a surprise to go with Kiss from a Rose, because it was a song that had already been released, so it couldn't be eligible for Best Song at the Oscars. So I'm sure there were probably some discussions about that at Warner Brothers. But even though it's sort of the perfect song for the moment. But as writers, that is out of our purview. We don't get to choose the music. I spend a little bit of time telling my USC students, stop writing music cues, because it's not your job. So we're not the right people to ask.
But for Kiss for the Rose, Joel talked a lot about roses.
Yeah.
You see, the parents dropping the roses in the alley, and we see the roses at the funeral. That visual motif was very important to put into the film, and that made it into the script. And so he found a song that was perfect to accentuate that motif, which I thought was cool.
I'd like to give an answer to this question, but set it in the context of its time. So traditionally, it is the filmmaker's creative choice as to what music goes in, who the composer will be. But back then, back in those days, there were these gigantic things called record companies. And the studios owned and controlled the music industry in so many ways. Now, at Warner Brothers alone, they had Warner, Elektra, Asylum, and Atlantic. And that was a powerful, money-producing part of the whole operation. So if they had a new act that they were looking to break, or an established act that they wanted to see in a movie, they also had a lot of say into it. But at the end of the day, you know, I look back, Prince, Smashing Pumpkins, Seal, yet we still get Danny Elfman and Elliot Goldenthal, and you know, it's kind of becomes the best of both worlds.
Awesome. Ian.
Hi, you know, when I think of Joel Schumacher, I also think of movies like Falling Down, 8mm, Phone Booth. Wondering,
Lost Boys.
yeah, oh yeah, Lost
Sure.
Boys, thank you. Were there any ideas, I guess, in the creative process that were more like, maybe a little bit more subversive or darker that were considered and ultimately was like, okay, this is not gonna meet the mandate, you know, the studio mandate? Or were there any such interesting ideas that you remember that were considered and but not ultimately done?
Well, we were all on the same page, I think, from the beginning. Joel did something that's very rare. I don't know any other director that did this. He was finishing up the client down in New Orleans. And so he flew us, because we're shooting during the day and we've got evenings free, he flew us to New Orleans. And so we're, you know, in the hotel room brainstorming. He also brought down the editor, Dennis Vergler. He says, these are the two people at the beginning of the process and the end of the process, and they never meet. So Dennis was there, and we were able to talk through our vision and Joel's vision and what we thought for the structure. And so he had, when he's in the editing room, he had that sense of vision from the very beginning before we even started writing. And so there was a cohesion to that I think is, I'm envious for other writers who don't get that. I wish they did. That everybody on the team there's cross-pollination of ideas.
Everybody who's sort of involved in the structuring of the story. And it was wonderful for us because Dennis sat there saying, okay, here's the things you should not bother to write because I'm gonna cut them out.
Interested in that?
Yeah, he gave us sort of this list of things that he's like, they're never gonna make it into the movie, don't waste time. And that was wonderful.
Awesome.
What was on the test?
My question is, thank you for making Batman Forever my childhood 90s movies.
That's where a
I
lot of
was
us
born
do.
in 92 when Keaton ended his run, and I didn't know nothing about Keaton after watching Forever. And my mother was very religious on violence and stuff like that. My dad was the only one like, these are fiction characters, don't tell your mother. I'll let you guys watch violence with your younger brother. But Batman Forever always was my childhood 90s Batman. Val Kilmer, my 90s Batman. People were like, what? Keaton? I was like, I knew about Keaton after Forever. So my dad took me to this palm shop, and then I knew who Keaton was. And he bought me those two on VHS. But my question is I have those 4 movies, and you know how you guys said earlier, you guys didn't want to bring no one back from the Tim Burton universe to do the Forever and Batman and Robin. I always wondered, and it always stuck to my head, was the Batman Forever universe and the Batman and Robin all connected to the Tim Burton? Because Commissioner Gordon never got recast. He was always in all the 4 films.
Same with Alfred.
The same with Alfred. So that in my head, I was like, you know, or there was Val Clooney was Tim Burton's Batman, or
What is canon?
you know.
It all takes place on Earth 774 in the metaverse. Otherwise, there's no rhyme or reason. I wish I could just tell you right here and now. But you brought up something else. Can I just see a show of hands? How many people was this the first Batman movie you ever saw? How many people saw this movie when they were children? How many people saw it with your mom or your dad or your grandpa or your grandma? Thank you. One of the most touching things that I get back from fans is when I hear my grandpa or my mom or my dad took me as a kid to see this movie, and it was this most amazing, life-impactful experience, and they're not here today. But this movie will forever have a special meaning to me for that experience. And And that, I think, is the most wonderful thing that can come out of movies like Batman Forever. And as somebody connected to the whole kit and caboodle, it's to me one of the most meaningful things that has validated my entire journey.
Yep.
The best review we ever got, right after it was released, we were down in San Diego with a group of writer friends, sort of like a retreat, and we all went to go see it together at the local theater. And there was the nephew of one of our friends was there, 11-year-old kid, 11-year-old boy, and afterwards we came out of the screening and we were there in the lobby, and he came up to Jan and me and said, "Thank you for getting it right." And Jan said, "Well, thank you, because you're who we wrote it for."
Awesome. Harkening back to the continuity question, one of the things that I've told people too is that, like, whether it's in the same universe or not, it doesn't negate it, right? If it's not connected to 89 or Returns, Batman Forever still exists. It's still its own thing, whether you see it as a continuation or a possible continuation of, like, Keaton just kind of regenerates into Kilmer at some point, or if you see it as like its own type of thing, whereas like this is its own universe, like Michael was talking about, like it being not connected to the Burtonverse, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't negate its existence. It still exists the way that you want it. So make for it what you will. It's a possible future, or it's a possible separate universe. It just comes down to what you decide. Great. Over there.
What is your favorite scene from the movie, from like the highlights for closing of the movie? What is your favorite scene?
What's your favorite scene of the movie?
I really love Batman coming through the wall of fire. And that was Joel. He said, I want to see that cape coming through the wall of fire. Give me a wall of fire.
Don't care how you do it.
Yeah, it's like, yeah. He said, we really don't care the reason for the wall of fire, but I want that shot. And I really love that shot. I talking to the stuntman, it was sort of funny. He was like, I hate the cape. I hate the cape. The cape weighs 40 pounds. He said, the only time I liked the cape was the wall of fire, because he could pull the cape over him and let the fire, and he was like, that was the one time I liked the cape.
My favorite part of the movie was, I don't think enough credit is given to Michael Goff, played Alfred as a carryover from the previous films. Because I thought in some sense he was like the soul of the movie, and his kindness and concern for Dick Grayson. You know, angry young men need guidance, and the warmth and the compassion that he brought to that role. And my favorite little moment was Bruce. He's taken the car, or actually his wrist rated. He boosted the Jag. No, the other car. Oh, to whatever. No, the other car. That was like, I wrote that line, and like it was everything I saw in my head when I wrote it. So that just felt alive.
Michael?
My favorite scene was not the one where the Batmobile goes straight up the building.
Which we did not write.
Which they did not write.
Yeah,
Tell us why.
because our question was, how does he get back down? Yeah.
Flies. Yeah.
Never addressed. I just like that opening fight scene where Batman appears in that black costume and just beats the shit out of everybody. I love that whole opening scene.
So we are pretty much at time, but right before the last minute, as Stan would say, you got to get the plug in. So why don't we, anything that you would like to plug or promote, or anywhere that people can follow you, starting with Batchler?
You know, we lead a pretty private life. I am on various social media, but
I'm not on social media. I have people who do that for me.
yeah, pretty much. So we're not really plugging anything today.
Michael?
Okay, Stan, I got it. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. We have a lot of fun. I try to post fun and informative stuff and pictures that you may not have seen before. Also, my memoir, The Boy Who Loved Batman, is out, available through Barnes & Noble or Amazon. It's also available as an audiobook that I narrated, I recorded, which was a lot of fun. The sequel book is called Batman's Batman. And last thing I'll mention is The Boy Loved Batman is now being turned into a Broadway play. And I'm very excited about it. So stay tuned for a major announcement coming up in the next couple of months.
Awesome. And for those who want to follow my podcast, The Superhero Stuff You Should Know, that's why we got the QR codes here. Just scan that there, and you can follow the YouTube channel, and you can find out all of our deep dives into the original scripts, a breakdown of what I saw of the Schumacher cut, interviews with Tim Flattery, who designed the Batmobile, and all that sorts of good stuff. That's all over there when you scan it. And then these are my comics over here that we can talk about afterwards. But Musashi and Sons, basically a Batman and a Robin in samurai form, and Alter Ego is my own take on supervillains in a Game of Thrones type of world. So with that, that is Superhero Stuff You Should Know. Thank you very much.